experts from the world's leading universities and think tanks, including the Fletcher School and the Heinz Center, have created a new climate scorecard called C-Roads that more accurately predicts where we're headed. It shows that if you take the best, latest offer of every country that's on the table and assume that those offers will be perfectly, completely implemented, guess what? None of it is nearly enough to get the job done. Right now, our best efforts may limit us to a rise of 3.9 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, even though the world's major economies agreed this year in Italy that anything beyond 2 degrees would be catastrophic. That's why Copenhagen is not about one country or one faction simply making a demand of another. It's the science itself demanding action from all of us. As fingers point in one direction or another, as frustration grows with the politics of one country or another, we just can't afford to lose sight of the reality that no country individually, and none of us collectively, are doing enough. None of us. So why then are these next 3 days so important? Because it is crucial that we get started. By setting a price on carbon and committing ourselves to reduce emissions, we will send a signal to the marketplace that will literally revolutionize the global supply and use of energy. It will forever alter the patterns of capital investment and consumer behavior. I believe in the power of the free market, and when the free market is unleashed to solve the problem, our innovators and our entrepreneurs can eclipse all of the predictions and render all of the models obsolete. I have absolutely no question that every country that's put a target out there will exceed the target and exceed it much more rapidly and much more easily than they believe. And if you don't believe me, let me remind you that in 1992, when we met in Rio, there were about 26 sites on the internet. Type Copenhagen into Google now, and you get about 43 million hits. In the 12 months since we gathered in Poznan, I've seen a series of successes, all of which, if you look at them in the whole, add up to a changed and a changing world. I'm proud to say that nowhere has that change actually been more pronounced than in the United States, where we are at last moving in the right direction. In January, we swore in a president who promised to, quote, mark a new chapter in America's leadership on climate change. And he has. Since January, we have made the single largest investment in clean energy in our nation's history, $80 billion, which will result directly in emissions reductions. At the Major Economies Forum, we led the world in trying to agree to the notion of cutting global emissions in half by 2050. We've set a bold, binding target to raise the fuel economy of America's cars and trucks for the first time in 3 decades. And now we have accelerated those targets by 4 years. Just this month, our Energy Secretary, Stephen Chu, announced a $350 million energy fund for advanced economies to help pay for wind, solar, and efficiency projects in the developing world. And this is important. 33 of our 50 states have voluntarily entered into compacts to reduce emissions. As a result, today, as I stand here, over half of the American economy is already preparing to implement mandatory emissions reduction policies, setting up trading systems in 4 regions of the country. More than 1,000 mayors are taking strict measures to aim towards Kyoto targets, and a number of cities are actually getting close to those on their own without the federal government. Across America, grassroots initiatives are sprouting up as citizens lead their leaders. It was against that backdrop that the House of Representatives finally passed comprehensive climate change legislation with billions of dollars for international adaptation, technology transfer, deforestation, and for the first time in American history, a national mandatory emissions target. And just last week, the Environmental Protection Agency sent a wake-up call to Capitol Hill. If Congress won't legislate, the EPA will regulate. In the last 10 months, we have accomplished more than we did in the previous 10 years. 2 years ago in Bali, in a room much like this one, the delegate from Papua New Guinea chastised the United States, saying, quote, "If you are not willing to lead, then please leave it to the rest of us. Please get out of the way." Well, we're here today. The United States is back, and President Obama is coming to Copenhagen to put America on the right side of history. But as energized as I am about all that we've done this year, obviously, as Ivo just said a moment ago, we need to complete the task in the United States Senate. I understand that. Frankly, meeting that challenge early next spring can be enormously assisted by what is achieved here in Copenhagen. In the Senate and in America, the concerns that kept us out of Kyoto back in 1997, to the chagrin of many, are still with us today, and we need to preempt them here in Copenhagen. Make no mistake, I do not offer these insights in order to defend inaction. I simply want to describe for you the reality of what it is going to take to get this done. Some of my colleagues in Washington, like some leaders elsewhere, remain reluctant to grapple with a climate crisis that for them is mostly measured in future dangers, when they're confronted every day with the pain, present pain, of hard-working people in tough economic times. To pass a bill, we must be able to assure a senator from Ohio that steel workers in his state won't lose their jobs to India and China because those countries are not participating in a way that is measurable, reportable, and verifiable. Every American, indeed I think all citizens everywhere, need to know that no country will use this as an excuse to claim an unfair advantage. Shared responsibility must include an obligation to share information about each country's good faith efforts to keep its commitments. That's common sense. After all, that's what an agreement means. People need to trust the process, and that trust is built through transparency. There is absolutely nothing new and nothing threatening about that kind of transparency. We have it in nuclear arms control agreements, and we have it in trade agreements. Countries have accepted the international rules and enforcement mechanisms of the WTO and flourished. And today, we must share with each other in good faith our efforts to meet the new standards that come with international climate commitments.